I think I have a marker over here. Ah, yeah. Sometimes that's called a dialogical relationship. So, let's try it. Take any. Which sentence would you like?
Okay, the last sentence.
Take anyone.
The one is primarily the good. Now that implies a lack there. Why would you just say the one is the good? If you say primarily, that means there's something missing.
Yeah. See, if the way we're talking about it, this good brings something about. What does the good bring about? Well, it brings about completion. It brings things into a higher unity. It holds it together, brings it together, holds it together. That's one. Therefore, the good, even though it's not normally considered that way, primarily, it's one. So the game, you see, of Proclus is that you can take any of his propositions and you can just change the terms and see the same thing in it. Whenever you're wondering about any one of them, you can just jump it. Put in other terms and the same relations are going to hold. And that's the secret of the dialectic. Basically, it's simple. Now, if we can talk this way, what happens now if we now talk this way about contemplation? So first, what is it like to go through this and see that you can use this language in our four categories: bread, lovers, the dialogic relationship, and learning? Does it not render them all intelligible? Gives a vocabulary for it. You can share it. I'm always interested in this question. What difference does it make to be able to see that and think in this way? What difference does it make? I think it makes one difference. You can always talk to the great bread maker, whose bread is wholeness, has a quality of wholeness to it consistently. And you can talk to him and you can say, how do you account for the fact that you have the most excellent bread? How does it distinguish itself from you? We could go to people who can then dialogue in this ideal way. We can say the same thing. What are the difficulties you had to overcome in order to function in this way? Because they must have encountered difficulties to achieve it. Should they not then, in some way, be able to give us insight in how they were able to bring all the ideas together, bring themselves together, how they had to hold it together over difficulties, how they had to bring about a harmony in their reasoning between the two of them and with an ideal? And that's helpful, isn't it? Because that means you can make distinctions in what you're doing that's significant. And I think those are the great 5 things, right? Good food, right? Love, dialogical relationships, learning, and finally contemplation. So, shall we risk the next one? Contemplation. Notice, you have the sheet, you have the language we can use. Right? One of the most interesting questions, I think, that most people encounter in this whole game of contemplation is, wouldn't you agree that sitting formal sitting is not contemplation. Otherwise, anyone who has lost their legs would be a natural contemplator. Right? So, you could ask someone who is into this art of contemplation, sir, when you, if they do, let us say, formally sit, we can say, sir, when is it you would say you're contemplating and when are you sitting? Because just sitting isn't contemplation. Ah, then they'd wake up and they'd say, what? And would say, oh, no, please don't take offense. Don't take offense. Now let's assume now we can then proceed with this dialogue and we have that ideal of the Logos before us, and if the person is open to exploring it, right? We could say, now look here, in your past, would you agree there are times when you can say you were in fact contemplating rather than just sitting? Wouldn't you agree? Yes. And wouldn't you agree a good part of what is called sitting or contemplation is to make the transition from sitting to contemplating? Now, would you agree that the contemplator, right, he may at that time, sitting on his cushion, think he's avoiding a life of action, but what happens is therefore all the action takes place in his mind. And now he has to struggle with a higher kind of action, the thoughts, and all that they bring with them, and bombard us with them. And therefore, would you agree to the degree that these thoughts dominate, ideas, images, feelings dominate, they're just sitting. And they finally have to reach the point where there has to be a change. There has to be a change. Now, would you agree what happens is that each one of these thoughts, images dominate, and they are often at war with other ones. So there's an internal conflict going on. That people should become absorbed in some of these train of thoughts, sometimes called fantasies, sometimes called thoughts. And therefore, to that degree, they're sitting, though they're trying to settle their mind in order to do this other thing. Well then, they build up jiriki, concentration. They bring their mind back to the same thing, back to their koan, to their breathing, whatever their exercise is. Slowly, that curve increases. They finally are able to maintain somewhere in here more and more, focusing on the breath, focusing on the koan, mantra, whatever it is they're doing. When that occurs, there's a point where they recognize they are no longer besieged by this earlier condition, and a relaxation takes over. Now sitting begins. Now contemplation begins. Now, then those thoughts have to come, they have to be dealt with, and then there's a state that emerges, right? When you're more focused now, they call it focus. What it really means is it's simply not dispersed, because you're always concentrated, you're concentrating on particulars. So now you focus. It's easier to focus, and to the degree that that can be held, right, to the degree that you